Hello, South Dakota. My name is Stacey, and I'm proud to say I am a constitutionalist. I am in my second run for Secretary of State of South Dakota, and I wanted to do this video today to give everybody my specific plan on the greatest points that we need to reform and focus on as Secretary of State. Right now we have been experiencing a lot of unfair practices out of the Secretary of State's office, decisions that are being made that keep one particular candidate over another off the ballot, etc. There's a lot of problems and a lot of things that can be reformed in this office if you elect someone that stands by and upholds and defends the Constitution of the United States. And I am the only candidate out of the four of us that is a strict constitutionalist. And so I have actually devised a 8-point focus of key reforms for the office. Number one, this is actually how things should be, in my opinion, in the Secretary of State's office in the future. And so I've got an 8-point plan of the most critical issues that need reforming. Number one, no voter should have to travel an unreasonable distance to vote. We need to establish realistic access to vote for all South Dakotans, and I mean all South Dakotans, of course, that are U.S. citizens and allowed to vote. Number two, we must restore the people's legal and natural right to recall any elected official in South Dakota according to this power affirmed in our Declaration of Independence. And let me explain that, because some people have never even read the Declaration of Independence, quite frankly, or they don't understand because they haven't read all of it. Basically, we as Americans, as our natural right as human beings, really, anytime a government has become destructive to our freedoms and our liberty as individuals, we have the power and right to abolish that entire government and, quoting from the Declaration, institute new guards, shall we say. In other words, new leaders in government, on all levels of government. That is our right as a natural right. And so a lot of people in South Dakota don't realize that our state legislature at some point decided they wanted to basically protect themselves from ever getting booted out of office midterm. And so they put in so-called law in a statute in South Dakota saying that, for instance, none of the statewide offices the people are able to recall, according to the state statute. None of the state legislatures can be recalled right now. And I want to change this because I believe that statute is completely unconstitutional. If the Declaration of Independence, as one of our founding documents, states that we have the right to, anytime our government has gotten destructive to our freedom and liberties and corruption, etc., that we have the right to abolish it and install new guards, then we have that right as human beings, as U.S. citizens in the United States. And so I believe that is unconstitutional statute that is currently prohibiting us from being able to have a recall referendum on the ballot. And so that is crucial, in my opinion, because it leads to the feeling of elected officials that they could do whatever they want. They have 4 years or 2 years. They can do basically whatever they want. unless they don't, it's not criminal or whatever. They know there's no repercussions from the people ever recalling them because of that state statute. And so what I believe as a constitutionalist, and this is backed by Supreme Court decisions, is there is no such thing as an unconstitutional law. And so as Secretary of State, I am going to change that. We are going to start obeying the Constitution. What a concept. We're going to start obeying the Constitution. And I will do, as I promised in my 2010 run, one of the first things I'm going to do as Secretary of State is first go through all current state statutes that are still in effect and determine their constitutionality. Now, some of these are going to be no-brainers. I use what I call a fifth grader test. If it's so boldly unconstitutional that a fifth grader with very limited knowledge of the Constitution can tell that that is something that is against it, then we are not going to enforce that. That is an unconstitutional enactment. It is not a law. And the Supreme Court has ruled such that it is actually our duty as Americans and as people that are in office in public trust that have sworn an oath to protect and uphold and defend the Constitution. It is absolutely against that oath to be enforcing things that should not be considered law to begin with. And so I will be looking at all the state statutes, anything that is a gray area that needs some legal expertise to make that determination. Then those will go on a different list for further review. But the first list I'm going to make is all the statutes that we should not even be abiding by legally. So my number 2 was, as far as recalls, we are going to restore the ability of the people to recall any elected official. Now, the only thing that I would need to draft up and the state legislature would need to pass is the method of how we bring about the recall. In other words, should it be a petition of so many registered voters to be able to get that on the ballot? So I'm going to look at and draft a bill to suggest to the legislature for passing to actually do the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s of how do we get the recall election a reality. So that part of it will have to be passed by the state legislature. Number 3, we're going to open up ballot access to South Dakotans serious about serving we the people. A lot of this in opening up ballot access will be very simple. Some of it will be the fact that as a third-party candidate, I'm not going to be biased siding with the Republicans or the Democrats. And that's huge, I think. A huge reason to vote for me for Secretary of State is I'm not biased towards either party. I have been a third-party girl for 7 years now and a strict constitutionalist. I'm not going to be biased Republicans or Democrats. I'm going to try and follow the Constitution and make fair rulings. And so there have been a lot of ballot access issues in the primary and getting on the general election this time around. And a lot of those could be solved if somebody was following the Constitution and was following fairness and common sense, quite frankly. The recent situation with Laura Hubble being allowed to be replaced on the independent candidate Mike Myers, that was a matter of just pure common sense, folks. Of course, someone should be able to replace their running mate if in this case, Mrs. Collier had gone through the formal withdrawal with the Secretary of State's office already. So saying it shouldn't even have gone to court is what I'm saying. That was just a common sense thing. She already qualified and went through the procedure with withdrawing her candidacy. Of course, Mike Myers was owed the respect of being able to pick her replacement. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Should never have gone to court. So there's a lot of things like this that we can, in essence, open up ballot access just by inserting some good old common sense and by consulting the Constitution of the United States. Number 4, this is an issue I have been passionate about for many years, and I've done a lot of research on, and that is number 4, all ballots cast on election night to be hand-counted in public view at local precincts. Tallies must be reported prior to removal of any ballot box from the precinct. The only way that we can truly ensure, and I as the next Secretary of State, in good faith, with a straight face, can certify the accuracy of any vote count is if those votes and those ballots have the utmost integrity. That means the counting and actual tallying to each candidate was done in public view, not in privacy, not in secrecy of computerized software. There is no way to guarantee the legitimacy of a final vote result if it's done in secret. And it's totally unconstitutional, by the way. So I will reinstitute on the local precinct level the hand counting and public view of all ballots cast on election night. That is absolutely crucial. Even if we open up ballot access and are able to get a lot of really good candidates on the ballot while I'm Secretary of State, it will be for naught if we can't ensure the integrity of the vote count. So those two run hand in hand with each other. But that is the most crucial thing, because folks, your voice on election night needs to be your true voice, how you really voted. If it is not, then we've lost everything. We've lost everything. That means that we are not electing people. If it is not, verified and watched and everything is completely transparent. Without that, we have a government where people are being selected, not elected. And you have no voice, is what that means if it's not right. So we're going to change that, absolutely. Number 5, no candidate will be placed on any South Dakota ballot unless constitutionally eligible to run for that office. And I think a lot of you folks out there know what I'm talking about. If I had won in 2010, I had made an ironclad promise that no presidential candidate that cannot prove they were a natural-born citizen would not have appeared on any ballot in the state of South Dakota, period, if I had won the election in 2010. We are going to change that. Number 6, no restrictions or permit to carry is appropriate. The Second Amendment affirms our natural right of individuals to keep and bear arms. This is the Second Amendment. It's right out of the Bill of Rights, and there is absolutely no legal basis for having permits issued out of the Secretary of State's office. A permit is asking the government for permission to be able to exercise your natural God-given right to protect yourself, your property, and your family. The Constitution guarantees us that no level of government was supposed to ever infringe upon that natural right. So we are going to tackle that issue as well. Number 7, all adult U.S. citizen residents of South Dakota have the right to vote without exception. In my opinion, it is patently unconstitutional to make exceptions for U.S. citizens residing in South Dakota and take away their voting rights for any reason. That, to me, is akin to declaring them a non-citizen of the United States. It is our fundamental basic right as citizens to vote. So how could that be taken away for any reason? To do so, like I said, it's rendering them a non-citizen. And I will fight that tooth and nail to get that changed. Number 8, I believe there's a need to set up an anonymous tip line for members of the press to report censorship in trying to cover any candidate running for public office in South Dakota. I think it's anti-establishment candidates, independent candidates, third-party candidates, or even candidates in Republican and Democrat Party are getting a lot of bias against them when they run for office. And I believe there's a lot of very, very good reporters throughout our state that are probably writing and covering these candidates, and they never see the light of day in the newspaper for you to be able to know that they're running. And so I want to set up an anonymous tip line. It is going to be held in the strictest confidence. No one will ever publicly know at all what reporter called in or what news service they were from. That is going to never be let out. And what it'll be used for is, say for instance, we've got a 3-way race, whatever race it is, and I'm getting tips from journalists that they're trying to cover like the third-party candidate, or maybe it's a candidate in a primary and they're more anti-establishment, and the stories keep getting, chopped and they never appear. And so the public is only presented really a deception of how many people they actually have a choice of voting for. So what I would do in that instance, if I got, like say 3 reports come in that I tried to cover XYZ in an article, and it keeps not showing up. My editor, it gets shelved. I just can't seem to get anything published, for instance, or I was going to do a news broadcast and they scrapped it over and over again. Then the solution is easy. As Secretary of State, I'm going to do a press conference. I'm not going to mention anything about getting complaints or what they were or anything like that. I'm just going to merely inform the voters of South Dakota that in that particular race, there are 3 candidates. Candidate A, Candidate B, and Candidate C. Case closed. I want the public to not be deceived into thinking there's only 2 candidates in a 3-candidate race. Period. I think that's the least we can do as far as honesty to the voters. They deserve to know before they get in the ballot box how many candidates, what their names are, so that they have time ahead of election night to be able to research and do their due diligence on every candidate that's running in that race. I think that's the least we can do, and that's the most honest thing we could do, quite frankly. Anything less than that is a complete deception of the public, and they have the right to know. So these are 8 of the most critical issues that I believe we face, and that a Secretary of State has some say-so and control over that we can reform for all the people of South Dakota in a fair, responsible, legal, and constitutional manner. And that is exactly what is going to be the beginning of my focus as your next Secretary of State of South Dakota. Folks, here's one very important point. I can't do any of this without you. I would encourage anyone, if you don't have to agree with all 8 points, you don't have to be a member of my party. All of that doesn't matter. We are trying to bring back free and fair elections to the people of South Dakota so that your children and your grandchildren, if they are passionate about running for office, I want them to have a realistic chance of being able to get on the ballot and be treated fairly and have a chance of actually serving the people in office. And that is my commitment to you. So with your support, that's the only way that it's going to happen. I encourage people, if you agree with me on these points, please go to my website. It's LoriStacey.com. That's LoriStacey.com. Please check out my website. I need your support. There's a donate button there. I definitely need to get this message out, and I can't do it alone. So I do need your help. Anything you can do. If you can't give to the campaign monetarily, I sure could use a lot of volunteers. Even if you can't run around and do things, if you have a computer and you could spread the word through social media, there's all kinds of things people can do to help my campaign, and I would really appreciate your support. Thank you. God bless you. And let's really steamroll into November and get this message out. Thank you.